Hello and welcome to the FASA Leadership Lounge, where we discuss various policies impacting Florida school leaders. I am Michelle White, Executive Director of the Florida Association of School Administrators.
And I'm Jessica Janasiewicz. I serve as the lobbyist for FASA and a number of school districts in Florida. Since our last episode, we were waiting anxiously about a decision on whether the legislature would end session in sine die or extend. And the answer came quite late on Friday, May 2nd, which was supposed to be our last day of session. Ultimately, the Senate president and the House Speaker came to an agreement to extend the session, but just for a limited number of bills that would be discussed, and set an end date for that extension to June 6th at 11:59 p.m. They said, don't plan to come next week. We're going to take the week and then we'll be back. The plan was at the time, we'll be back on May 12th. The following week, we'll start budget conferencing there. That all seemed to be all well and good until this past week, when we started to hear that there was some trouble with the negotiations. There were a couple factors here. One, the governor last week stated that any permanent sales tax reduction is dead on arrival, that he is not interested in that policy, and he will veto it should a bill like that pass. Well, of course, when they extended the session, the bills that they included were the budget bills, and one of the other bills was the sales tax reduction bill, which was what the House Speaker really wanted. So that seemed to derail the negotiations. Then just on Friday of last week, a letter was presented to House members from the House Speaker, which said in some very pointed language that unfortunately, the Senate has gone back on their agreement. This is what the letter said, and is not going to agree to a sales tax reduction. And as a result, our budget negotiations have fallen apart. We are going to have to extend the session until June 30th. We will come back next week to vote on that concurrent resolution to extend the legislative session. And while we're here, we will also hold a meeting of that special property tax committee that we mentioned that House was convening. So it became very clear on Friday of last week that things had gone awry in the last week.
And the fireworks are still happening. It's amazing in some ways and frightening in others. So, of course, with an announcement from the House has to come an announcement from the Senate.
Oh,
And
yes.
along those lines, the Senate president took the avenue of, well, we're going to continue to work with the House on the budget. Members do not need to be in Tallahassee for May 12th. Stay home. We will we'll convene an extend session when we have to come together. But what does that mean? So right now, if the House, as they're planning, extends to June 30th, there's potential that we won't have a budget until then, probably very late that day, which is the last day of this fiscal year. And that can put a lot of strain on all of our state agencies and really any of our state government funded organizations, including our school districts, on how do they prepare for July 1. So it's really difficult to do that. We do expect them to come back for conferencing, and the Senate has kind of hinted towards we're gonna come back and we're gonna do conferencing when we get to a better place and have those discussions. So trying to stay in contact with the House, as the Senate president said. But again, state agencies are really, they're not authorized to spend money past June 30th. And this is where we have seen with the federal government over really the last 5-10 years, where we've had these pauses and people are not getting paid for those hours. But we still need people to show up and do the work. And so it is going to be a really strenuous time for our schools and our districts where we're still providing services on July 1 to students, maybe for summer school and other programs, early learning programs, things like that. So this could really unravel really quickly.
That's exactly right. And even if we get a budget, and I certainly, if history is a guide, I certainly have never heard of a time where they didn't pass a budget by June 30th. But even if they do, let's say they pass it June 28th, June 29th, this is still a challenge for our school districts because our school boards and superintendents are and staff at the district office are working right now to build the budgets for the next school year. And it's very challenging to make a budget when you do not know how much money you are going to be receiving. And so we're really going to come down to the wire, kind of regardless, it looks like with just where we are right now. And so it all just makes us question where do we go from here? And really negotiations will just continue. And quite frankly, the way our government works, the House and the Senate have to work together to build a budget. And then it is incumbent upon the governor to sign that budget and veto what he chooses to veto. So really all of the parties are going to have to come together in order to get this done. As for any of the other issues that were out there and outstanding as of the Friday when session was supposed to end, Friday, May 2nd, with the concurrent resolution that we are currently operating under, all policies except what they included in that resolution are dead. So they decided to include what they are still considering are all the budget bills, the tax package, which is something we have every year. Our members will be familiar with the school tax, sales tax holiday when parents can buy school supplies for their kids tax-free. That is one of the examples of the things that are included in the tax package. There are a myriad of things. The sales tax reduction bill, that of course was a priority for the speaker. And then the rural renaissance bill was also supposed to be in play. Now with all of this back and forth about a disagreement on the sales tax reduction bill, I think you can count on right now rural renaissance is also very much in dire straits because clearly looking at those bills, that was part of the deal. One would assume you have the major priority for the speaker and the major priority for the president. So those are still in play. If and when the House extends to June 30th, they will likely extend those as part of it. And then, as you noted, the Senate has not told us when they're going to come back. So right now they're continuing to operate under the concurrent resolution that goes through June 6th. One other interesting thing to note that I'm certain all of the legislators are very aware of, because we are currently still in session, they extended and this is technically still a legislative session, members cannot fundraise. So you are not allowed to raise money and accept money from groups, PACs, any of those folks when they are in session, and they are still in session. So as the House Speaker has stated that they're going to extend through June 30th, that would mean that no members will be able to raise money until July 1st at the earliest.
And we know just from the work that we've been doing in separately through our FAFSA PAC, they're fundraising all the time. Even after they win the election, they're ready to fundraise for the next election. And so and also, elections get more and more expensive every year, and we continue to see that. So, this is a critical time for them, usually, to be back home in their districts and being the champion of the policies and the budget that was passed and sharing that with their communities and kind of building up their support. And right now, that's on pause because they can't come home and be that champion that they want to be.
That's
So,
right. And with the next session being an early session starting in January, that means they really just have now through July 1 through December 31st to raise money, because then when they're back in January, they won't be able to raise until that session ends as well. And so to your point, particularly House members that all are up for re-election next year, you can bet that this is a critical time.
Absolutely. Okay, so you mentioned that policies died. Let's talk about some of those ideas that had been out there in the world that did not pass. So some we're a little thankful for. Some, we wish that they would have moved along. First is around school grades. So there was language proposed that would have changed the grading scale for school grades. It would have elevated the requirements for an A, and the scores for that. We believe that that would have really devastated a large number of our communities across the state for any school that's getting a school grade. So not so not so good, I guess, in that the language is not good, but good in that it didn't pass. So it is done for this year. The second topic is around our Hope schools and additional requirements that would have been put on school districts to accommodate. That language did not pass. We have fought language around sovereign immunity for a number of years, and that did not pass. There were discussions, and we've shared in previous episodes around the materials that would be harmful to minors. And a couple of things. One, that language could have created opportunities for more challenges, but also could have uh, it wouldn't have allowed school districts to say this text is really important because of historical context and things like that to include it. So that language did not pass. And then unfortunately, deregulation didn't pass, which was really championed by Senator Simon and as Dereg 2.0 this year. So we look forward to being able to support that in the future.
Yes, and I think when we spoke on the last, well, what was supposed to be the last day of session, May 2nd, you and I mentioned that there were still some bills that were very much in play, even though we were late into the afternoon on that Friday. As we had suspected, two of them were train bills, not that is not uncommon on the last day of session, and that's how they try to get various things passed. And then also the bill relating to teacher preparation programs, House Bill 875. So that bill did pass, and ultimately what was contained within that bill was the creation of the Florida Center for Teaching Excellence at Miami-Dade College. They essentially are going to create some new courses for teachers that they can take as part of a teacher preparation program. One of the things they did, there was a lot of discussion, particularly on the Senate side, about getting rid of the general knowledge exam requirement for teachers, because we have so many folks coming in from a non-traditional path, and we do have some that are struggling with that particular provision. The House did not want to do that, but the kind of compromise that they came up with in this bill is that they will have two courses that will be offered, that if teachers take and pass those, then they don't have to take the general knowledge exam. So there will at least be a different pathway now. They also have language in this bill that basically states what types of what curriculum they should offer, what the standards for these courses should be, et cetera, et cetera. One of the most positive things about this bill is it actually has a long runway. That is rare that we see when they pass legislation in Tallahassee. Oftentimes they pass it and they're like, hey, guess what? It passed in May and we're going to implement it and start this program on July 1st. And that's challenging. Most of the provisions in this bill will not go into effect until 2029. So there'll be a lot of time for us to work with our members and get input about the creation of these courses. We certainly, I would think Michelle would be working with our partners at the DOE to see if we can help in any way, guide and advise and provide with our members expertise to try to help make sure that this is a great product, and we have a lot of time to do so. So that's good news.
Absolutely.
Obviously, these bills, since they were passed at the very last moment, have not been sent to the governor. So just a caveat there. They'll have to be signed by the governor, though I don't think any of them stand any real chance of being vetoed. The first train was House Bill 1255, and it did a couple of different things. It had language surrounding the CLT, that classical learning test that we've seen districts use, expanding some of how that can be used and for what students. They also have allowed some language in here that would, this is quite positive, allow us to access essentially another pot of money to pay for liability insurance at the school district level. That really came about when sovereign immunity was floating around, and there were concerns that if that were to pass, one of the things that could be impacted is the cost of insurance, that our insurance rates would go up the school district. So obviously we know we have different pots of money that we have for that we're allowed to use for various things. The legislature tells us how we could use it. This says that you could include liability insurance and pay for that with your discretionary millage levy. So giving us a little bit of flexibility there. There's also some language surrounding corporal punishment, saying that that we have a handful of districts, I think, that still have that as a policy. Parents have to be notified. That's now a requirement. And then lastly, they did have language surrounding disobedient and disrespectful students, and essentially how those students could be punished. They're trying to respond to what they're hearing from teachers, particularly those teachers that are choosing to leave the profession, and why. And some of the feedback that they're getting is that student behavior has just become worse and worse, and that's a challenge. So that was that train. And then the really big train was House Bill 1105. It included many, many, many items, but I'll just highlight some of them that I think will be the most interesting to our members. There's language that discusses what a definition of trespassing on a school bus is, and then also adds that individuals can be arrested should they trespass on a school bus. So that's good news. Something that our members will undoubtedly hear about is the legislature in this bill has banned cell phones from K-8, students K-8. Now, we know some school districts are already doing that, but if your school district isn't, this will now be the policy. They also have included language about a study for grades 9 through 12, basically looking at 6 districts that undoubtedly the department, I'm sure, will be the ones who are responsible for choosing those districts and then completing that study. And then they have graduation flexibility for students that are in the marching band. They can use that as count as their physical education requirement or their fine art requirement. And then lastly, another one that may garner some attention is the elimination completely of the certificates of completion. That's something that Representative Valdez, former school board member, has been really talking about for years, and that was ultimately included in this bill.
Yeah, so lots of things to unpack from those, and we will certainly share more details along the way. I know that. And I would say too, we can expect a lot of rules to be coming from the DOE and the State Board of Education, especially as it relates to teacher preparation and those avenues. So we will, of course, keep everyone up to date on that. This week, what we can expect is that the House is going to be here. They plan to gavel into session and pass a resolution to extend the session to June 30th. And then, as Jessica mentioned earlier, that they'll have some committee meetings around property tax. So more to come. The Senate is not going to be here, so there won't be a lot of conferencing happening and real work on the budget in those avenues. Hopefully, behind the scenes, maybe the Senate president and the speaker will come to terms and figure out how do we move forward in the week after. But that is our update for this week. We want to thank you so much for listening. There is always more information in our news tracker, in our Friday Facts, and certainly the advocacy page on our website. We look forward to talking with you all soon. So have a good one. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership Lounge podcast presented by the Florida Association of School Administrators. Today's podcast was hosted by Michelle White and Jessica Jessica. The podcast is produced by Jeff Willoughby. Special thanks to musical director David Higgins. Make sure to subscribe to the Leadership Lounge podcast wherever you find your favorite podcasts. New episodes are released each Monday. For show topic suggestions, questions, or comments, please email communications@fasa.net. We hope you enjoyed the show.